Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, May 6th, and we're going to get started here on our pre-market analysis. What I'd like to do is jump to our super high time frames just to see if anything has changed. Um, when we go to our quarterly, we can see that nothing has changed. Super bullish, no indications of exhaustion or reversal. Same thing on our monthly. Everything looks very strong, very bullish. And then on our weekly, same deal, looking very strong, very bullish. And then, of course, we do have our weekly candle here, which has 2 more days to develop. So we're going to want to watch that because currently, if this bar closes on Friday and we don't break below that 4120 area, we'll start to see what looks like some decent divergence. Although, if you guys spend more time with me, you'll see that I typically want to see a defined peak in RVI here. So if you do look to the previous low that we made here on the week that closed on April 23rd, you have kind of an increase, you have a higher low. But if you look at where the indicator was at that time, you technically have this lower low. So we're going to kind of want to watch this. Again, I do not like this type of analysis. I'd like to see actual defined peaks. But it's just something interesting to point out here. If we do not break below, what's that level? For some reason, my data box is not set to on top. Okay. So if we do not break below 41.1050 by the end of Friday, then we definitely will have what could look like some bullish continuation on this weekly. Although, again, I like to see a defined peak, so not something that I'm wild about. So when we jumped again to the weekly, super bullish, no indications of reversal, despite the fact that we do have this kind of bearish looking doji on last week's candle. Outside of that, there really are no indications of exhaustion here. When we jump down to our daily, remember we said yesterday that we had some pretty good bullish continuation coming off of the low at 41.2050. And so we have not come back down to break that 41.2050. And so the bullish case is still intact here from a daily perspective. Now, I'm noticing, we're starting to kind of tighten up here and we're starting to kind of coil up. And so the last 2 days have been very, very small range. And we were basically trading within all the price action from May 4th. So we had all that price action May 4th. Yesterday we traded well within it, and then today, this morning, we're trading well within yesterday's candle. And so things are definitely coiling up here with a little bit of bullishness off the low. And then if you look at what's happening here, again, we pushed up in price from the low at, again, 41.2050 up to the low that we're making now, but the indicator is actually pushing way down. Now we do have all day for this candle to develop, so we don't want to say too much because the picture is going to change throughout the day as the market develops. But from the previous day, you can even see that we closed, again, the low was 41.53, so about 30 points higher, but yet the indicator pushed down just a little bit lower here. So definitely the indications of some bullishness off the lows, with no real signs of exhaustion up top, except for that bearish indication we got on April 29th, which led to the sell-off on the 30th, and then this pullback that we've had. So currently, super high time frames all look very bullish with no real clear indications of reversal just yet. When we jump to our 4-hour, yesterday at the beginning of our analysis, we did point out we had that bearish indication. And again, from there, we did pull back. But now I'm just looking into today and seeing if we have any clear indications. And currently, there's actually nothing that the 4-hour is doing to help our analysis right now. Now you can see obviously from a candlestick perspective that we had this huge candle here that closed at 11 a.m. on May 5th. And we've basically been trading well within that one candle all through the Globex and overnight and pre-market session here. And so we're probably going to have to break out from the two extremes here. So we have the previous daily low at 53, previous daily high at 80, and then 50% between the two. So breaking out from the high or the low is really going to give us a better indication. When we jump to our intermediate time frames, we'll start to build a bias if there is one. So far, again, no clear signs of reversal from our higher time frames. And then we have this pretty clear bearish signal that led to a pretty decent sell-off yesterday. And so now here we are into this morning. Here's our candle that will close at 7 a.m. And it's just super messy in here with no clear indications. So hopefully when we jump down to our intermediate time frames, we'll get a clearer picture of what's going on. Now what I'm noticing currently is we have some decent bullish indications off of the low that we made just a little bit earlier at 41.55 quarter. So you can see that we pushed up in price from, let's see, 51.50 up to 55 quarter, so almost 4 points. And or did I calculate that right? 55 to 51, yeah. So about almost 4 points. And then we have this push down in RVI. So we have a clear divergence. So that level there at 55 quarter, if this divergence is going to hold, that level has to hold at 55 quarter. So I'll just go ahead and mark that on my 1 hour chart here so I can look back to that. But so far we have what looks like a nice bullish divergence from that low. And if you look at the overnight low, which we made at, let's see, 41.50, we also had a very clear divergence there. So we have two nice clear divergences off of the current lows. And as far as the highs go, we don't have any signs of reversal here. So currently have some bullish indications there. Our 4 hour is just too messy to really say. And then the daily, you could technically make the case that there is some bullishness off the lows as well. So far we've got some bullish cases here on our high time frames. Now let's jump down to our intermediate time frames and just see what they're saying here. So we had that overnight low where we got, again, so we've got a 30-minute and a 60-minute agreeing here off of the overnight low, and we got a nice clear bull divergence. And then the current low that we just made, unfortunately, we cannot make the same case. Although you could kind of argue from both of these lows that we pushed up from, again, 51.50 here. We pushed up, but we pushed down. So we got a clear bullish divergence here. And then if you compare that previous low up to where we are now, we still have that clear divergence, right? So overall, we're still getting some pretty clear bullish indications off of that, off of the overnight low, and then the pullbacks that we got in the pre-market session here. I'm just kind of looking, and so we got a push down. And so outside of that, there are no clear bear indications off the highs. So we are starting to build up what looks like to be somewhat of a bullish case coming into the open here. So let's jump down to our 10-minute and see if we get agreement there. And the 10-minute has the same situation, that overnight low. We got a decent divergence. It's more so an exotic divergence here, where we have basically the same lows on RVI, but a distinct lower low in price. And so we got, again, another decent bullish indication from there. And then the same situation over off of this low. The other two lows here, we've got the push up, right, to a higher low, but a push down to a lower low on the indicator. And then here you can see we push down, and that level is 55 quarter. And we got a push up in RVI. So overall, we're getting these really nice bullish indications off the lows on pretty much every time frame, all the way down to our 10-minute now. And our highs don't really have any clear reversals signal. So even off the overnight high, we did not get a clear indication of a sell, and it did come down. And so everything kind of just looks normal on the top end, but at the bottom end, we're starting to get the irregularities, giving us indications of some bullishness here. So we will kind of monitor this coming into the open. We have about 12 minutes left. And I'll pull up the 3-minute, although the 3-minute is not going to give us kind of big moves. It's going to be there to kind of give us some nice entries on the shorter time frames here. And so I'm looking, and again, off of that low that we just made, we got that bullish indication on the 3-minute as well. And so far, if 55 quarter can hold here coming into the open, we have a pretty bullish case. Now this low here, not necessarily. You could actually look to the previous swing low there and see that we pushed up from the second previous swing low. And then from that overnight low, you can clearly see that you have kind of this push up in RVI and this extension down in price. And so overall, we're getting almost the same indications on our 3-minute. And remember, the 3-minute is really just for our short time frames to look for entries. They're not necessarily going to indicate big moves, but when they agree with the intermediate and the high time frames, that's when we're starting to pinpoint the best entry for that kind of move. So unfortunately, we're not here at 5:30 to potentially play this once it pushed up and we got the new candle here. But right now we have a pretty clear bullish case as long as we hold 55 quarter. When 55 quarter breaks, we basically have one last level to watch at 51.75 or 51.50, and then the whole case is going to change. And remember that we have to be, as traders, we have to be willing to change our hats from bear to bull on the drop of a hat. We have to change our hats on the drop of a hat. And so it's kind of where we are now. And let's look at we've got, again, a similar indication on the 1-minute. So it's pretty nice. Every single time frame had this bullish indication. Now we do have to keep in mind from the context of the market. Let me pull back to my higher time frame here, or my intermediate. Let's look at the 30-minute here. We had a decent push on May 4th, right? We came all the way up. And that just coincidentally, we were looking at 26.50 that day. We ended up pushing to 20.50, and then that was the low, and we bounced from there. And so this leg here, you can see that we're kind of having trouble in here. We're chopping around, and we had a huge chop box from 75 to 85 that we were watching. Now we're down in our 50 to 70 chop box here. And so at the moment, it is quite messy. So we're going to have to stick with what our signals are telling us, which is things look pretty bullish off lows with no clear bearish signals off the highs. And so hopefully what we'll get here is a nice push into the open, and we'll look for a nice clear entry here. So just, let's see here. Just kind of looking back at all this price action, pretty messy. You can see that all of April, just beautiful push almost every day. For the first 2.5 weeks of April was just a new all-time high every day. We got up to 41.83, which, by the way, I'm going to reiterate again, we called 41.80, 4,200 even, and 42.50 as the resistance points before we ever pushed up here. And there we got to 41.83.50, and we turned around. And then if you remember the last week and the week before that, just a lot of choppiness. Push up, come right back down. And then the beginning of last week was just that huge chop box from about 70 to 90. And then we tried to push and make a new all-time high. Got a lot of, it's just very shaky up in here as we try to push. So we just want to keep in mind that we are kind of in this whole box here. And if we were to look at this from a volume profile perspective, let's see. It would just be kind of interesting to see if we look at all the price action up in this area, where our point of control would be. And interestingly, it's still up there right around 41.81, which is where it was back at the middle of last week when we had all that choppiness. And so it's still there at 41.81, but overall the mean of all this price action, if you just look at the average, we're sitting at 41.55. So 41.55 is 50% of all the chop that we've been in for the last 2-3 weeks here. So just some things to keep in mind. You can see we pretty much just bounce right off 55 here. So they're holding that 50% area. And so let's just kind of step back. Let me clear this off my chart. And so now like I said, we're expecting this at least a little bit of a bullish push here. We don't want to break 55 quarter for sure, or 55.50. So I'll mark that on the chart to watch. And then ultimately, if we break below 51 quarter here, or 51.50, which I'll label with a different color. I'll label this green as well because we want to stay above it, but I'll make it a different color from the previous daily low. So we have this 55.50, which will also make the same color. We don't want to break below that because that's going to negate our bullish hypothesis here. So we're coming right into the CP. Again, no clear signs of exhaustion on this push on the short time frames here. So we have this push up to test the CP, but there are no signs of divergence here, so no signs of exhaustion on this push. So although we might get a little bit of a reaction directly off the CP, I don't think that this is the high right now. I think we have a little bit more to go. And let me go to my 10-minute here and just see if it's agreeing. And so the 10-minute does have the potential of a little bit of exhaustion, but when I look at 3, 1, and 512, I don't see it. So maybe we're not quite there yet on this push. So we have just about 5 minutes into the open, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep that bullish bias again, keeping in mind that 55.50 and 51.50 area. And we'll be looking for a buy into the open unless something changes in the next 5 minutes. But I will let you know I'm monitoring. What's really important here is following the short time frames. So what our 3-minute, 1-minute, and 512 are saying coming into the open. And so I will let you know if anything changes here. But currently I think we're going to look for a long on a pullback here for an expectation to push up and at least test 50% of the previous day. So ideally for the bulls, what they want to do here is they want to break above 66.50 and hold above it. And then, go ahead and break the previous daily high at 80. And so that's kind of what we're looking for from the bulls today. And if they cannot do that, then we have a bunch of levels below us to watch. And so because we have a few minutes, we might as well just take a look here from this 10-minute perspective and just kind of see if we do break down and we do not hold the bull bias off of the overnight low and off of the low we made in the pre-market here. We do have a pullback into the 61.8 retracement area, which lines up with our prediction points. So those are going to be important if we do break down, because despite breaking the area that we were bullish, that doesn't mean that the bulls are done with. So we do want to keep in mind that we don't have clear signs of a full reversal. So if our high time frames gave us a clear indication of a heavier pullback, we'd be looking for sells. But overall, we're still fairly bullish. And so we will want to see if we get a clear bull signal off of some of the levels below us as we pull back. But from an ideal perspective, we want to hold the overnight low and then that low we had at 55.50. So on the pullback here, 61.8 retracement lines up nicely with our KPs. And if you look at previous price action, there's a heck of a lot going on down here, right around 38.50, maybe 39.40 area. Just below that 61.8 retracement, if you look back in time here, we've got a lot of stuff going on right around this 40 level. So I have that 38.50 labeled for a reason, and that's because if you look back here all the way to the beginning of April, you can see we had a lot of resistance right around 38, multiple times throughout the day, more resistance on the day after that. And then when we pulled back, there was a lot of chop in that area. And then you can see all the way into the end of April, it became resistance again in this 38.50 area. So there's a reason I label these levels. And even if you look here at May 4th, when we broke down all the way to that 2050 low, we pushed up and found resistance where? Directly at that 3850 area. And so we've got that as well below us. And so these are some of the levels we want to be aware of if the market is going to sell off and goes against what our bias is for the morning here.